I'm Jeannie Kelly, your credit coach, and I'm so excited to have Rhonda Noordyk with us today. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you. And I'm excited because so much. Well, you have a podcast yourself, Divorce Conversations for Women.
Yes.
So I love that. We definitely have to make sure we have people listen to that because there's ongoing conversation before a divorce, during the divorce, after the divorce. And I didn't know someone like you existed. So I'm so excited about this. Let everyone know exactly how you help women during the divorce process. And because it's so much more, obviously, we know that it's so much more when it comes to financial wellness than, just thinking what you think when it comes to divorce and your money.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's exactly it, right? We know what we know and we know what we don't know, right? But then there's all the stuff that we don't even know that we didn't know. I'm like, okay, let's get our head around that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, so, it's interesting because I started my business 9 years ago. And when I did, I wanted there to be a safe place for women that were navigating through divorce, that they could ask questions, that they could be empowered. And as I have worked across the country, and some other, countries as well, the thing that I have found is that, you know, women have a choice, right? They can either decide that they want to be proactive or they can be reactive. And so what happens is like we don't necessarily know how the process is going to go. And I had just released a new kind of solo series on my podcast called The False Sense of, because I think we end up having a false sense of financial security, false sense of amicability, which basically means we allow ourselves to kind of be um I don't know, pawns, I guess, like as we're going through this because we're afraid to ask questions. We don't know what questions to be asking. We're relying on our attorney to be able to answer the questions.
Right.
And the attorneys are simply teeing it up like, hey, here's the proposal. What do you want to do? And the women are like, I don't even know what I want to do. Like, can somebody talk me through this? So I would say, kind of to answer your question, there's a couple things. One is I would say there's a coaching aspect. So I do financial coaching specifically around the divorce process. So working on attitudes and beliefs about money. But then also, I would say my biggest passion is the strategy. And each one is a little different. What are we
Mhm.
doing in this situation? Who do we need to be talking to? What questions do we need to be asking? What numbers do we need to be crunching to make
Right.
sure that women not only get through the divorce process, but also that they're in a position when the process is over to be able to move forward. And one of the stats that just really, I guess, is kind of the whole premise of why my company even exists is the fact that the stats have been showing us that women's lifestyle goes down about 41% after the divorce is over. And
Mm.
there's a whole host of reasons for that. There's, the wage gap. There's just the experience gap of being in the marketplace. There's gender bias gap, which this court system is not very nice to women, and a host of others.
Mhm.
And so you have, the spouse who's been in the workforce for a period of time, usually decades. Wife has decided that she wants to stay home, raise the kids, work part-time, whatever. So he, in theory, right, he's just further down the path. He's had more years of being able to grow his career, whereas
Right.
hers has maybe been stagnant for a while.
Right.
And so, so you add that into, hey, we're going through the divorce process and he's already ahead.
Mhm.
And then we have to work really hard to help women just get to the level playing field. And I think a lot of times people believe that the attorneys are going to be the ones who are advocating for them. And they are to a degree,
Mhm.
but they're also looking for the women to be able to come to the table and say, here's what I want, and here's what I want you to advocate for. So there's a disconnect,
Yep.
in that regard.
Yeah. Now, Rhonda, how did you get into this? How did your niche become, for women?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a couple things. One is I had been in the financial industry. I started in the early 2000s, ran a successful registered investment advisory firm with my husband, and I was a fiduciary. And quite frankly, I did women's events. We would have standing room only, and the women would leave and they'd say, well, my husband says we've got a guy, or my husband says that like
Ah.
I'll be well taken care of. And they kind of just let it be like, hey, I've got all this other stuff and fine, whatever, you can handle it and we'll move on. And long story short, I just really wanted there to be a space. I was having more and more women that were coming through my doors that were saying, Rhonda, my attorney's not calling me back. I don't know what questions to be asking. I feel like I'm leaving money on the table, but I don't even know what I'm leaving on the table. And now I'm concerned that am I even going to be able to pay my bills after this is over? And I thought, this is not okay.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so ended up actually probably about 10 years ago, I did a focus group. I pulled in women that were going through divorce, that had lost a spouse, that, were kind of in that place of transition. And I said, what's working? What's
Yeah.
not working? What do you need? What questions do you want answered? And I remember driving home from there saying, there has to be a better way to do this. And
Hmm.
I did not know the answer, but I'm like, well, we're going to figure it out. And
Yeah.
that was before there were divorce coaches. That was before the certified divorce financial analyst, had gotten some traction. Um, and so I started my model, built it from scratch, really just wanting to empower women.
Yeah.
And
I
I
love
always
it.
say, when I left the industry, the financial industry, I had this. I really felt like, hey, I'm this small town girl. I've got this business plan. I want to change the world. I have a plan on how I'm going to do it, but holy smokes, I'm scared.
But you did it. But you did it. And I love that. I love that you just, that you believed in it and you started and you got it. And
Yeah,
now look at how successful
yeah,
and all the women you have helped. Let me ask you this. When should a woman come see you?
yeah,
Like when's the perfect, if there was such a thing as a
yeah.
perfect time?
I would say ideally, certainly we have the podcast. We've got some resources for people that are like, well, I'm a couple years out from it. So yeah, hop on the podcast, read the blog articles, grab a free download, whatever. For the
Okay.
people that are really, I would say within 3 to 6 months of saying, within this next half a year, right? I
Okay.
really want to move forward. That's
Hmm.
a sweet spot because a lot of times there's things that women can be doing behind the scenes that I can help them with. Here's what you
Hmm.
need to be gathering. Let's get a good handle on the expenses. Let's make sure that we're addressing some of the debt. Let's take a look at, maybe they need to even open up a credit card because they haven't
Right.
had any, which is where you
Hmm.
come in. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of things we can be doing under the radar before
Hmm.
they officially file. Plus, I like to connect them with the right attorneys that are in alignment with our mission and our vision, which is to help alleviate financial vulnerability for women. And it's essential. So, so that's really ideal. And
Okay.
we have some programs. I've got a 6-month group experience program that they can participate in that is a great way for us to walk through step by step what they need to do to get through the process.
Okay.
It's really the same process that I've been using with my clients over the years that I developed and have helped hundreds and hundreds of clients go through that and have been able to move the needle significantly with their settlement outcomes as a result of the work we've been doing. So it's
Hmm.
it's been fun to be able to now offer that in a group setting,
Yeah.
a private group setting. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, um, that's ideal. Now, do I get calls from women that are in the midst of it? Maybe reach out early on. They decide, hey, I'm just going to go with an attorney and hire them. And usually those women call back and say, Rhonda, I've spent 10 grand,
Hmm.
15 grand, 20 grand. I don't know where we're at in the process. I don't feel like anybody's listening to me. And sure, they can do that DIY approach. They can go that direction, right? And certainly
Hmm.
we're here, but we can save them from doing that. Like,
Right.
we've had success in helping so many women know what questions to be asking, pushing the envelope. I mean, I often say the best visual of how I spend my day is I feel like I'm running up the down escalator. I mean, like at full force, right? And we get
Yeah.
to the top uh,
Right.
after working very hard.
Yeah.
But that's just the system. Like,
Hmm.
but I want to challenge the system. I don't want to just accept status quo because that's how the old boys network has been doing that for 20, 30 years. And that's just how we do it. Not acceptable,
Right.
you know?
Right. A hundred
And
percent.
so we're disrupting things,
I love
Jeannie.
it. I love that. And I am sure for all my divorce attorneys listening to this, they want to know you. You actually make their job, I think, easier. You're helping because there's so many things that maybe they're not thinking about when it comes to money and the divorce process. There's other things I'm sure that, you know, their attorneys looking at the law and,
Yeah.
you know, I have dear friends that are divorce attorneys that are absolutely amazing, but I'm sure when it comes to this money subject, there could be something you're going to see that
Yes.
you could save someone a lot of money, and it might not have ever even been talked about because it might just be something that you noticed, when you go through,
Yeah,
this process with these women. I think it's absolutely amazing because money is, listen, it's important. It's
yeah,
important how you're going to carry on in financial wellness, no matter what stage you're in
yeah.
of the divorce process.
Yeah, and I think that's an important part too, Jeannie, is that at the end of the day, right, the attorneys are a really important part of the process. I don't
Mhm.
take on any personal clients that aren't willing to have legal counsel, legal
Mhm.
representation in some form. So
Okay.
usually because they come to us before they have attorneys, I'm able to put them in front of attorneys that I know, that I like, that I trust, right, that are in
Mhm.
alignment with our mission and our vision.
Yeah.
And you're right, like there's times when I've been able to help women get unstuck because I can spend the time with them and explain what some of the different options are, or go back and say, hey, let's go back and ask these questions. Maybe this will help, clarify some things or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so the attorneys that we have partnered with, and we're always looking for great family law attorneys,
Okay.
but the ones that we have partnered with, they get it. Like they
Okay.
value the expertise we bring to the table. And my approach is always very practical. I mean, could we run reports and get stuck in the weeds all day long? Yeah. But at the end of the day, anybody who knows when we get into the negotiations, we're not in the weeds. We're in the big
Yeah.
picture, what the impact means for the clients, how are they going to be positioned after? Those are the kinds of things that I feel like I am very good at bringing to the table and
Mhm.
helping women understand, what the divorce settlement options are for the finances and what it
Mhm.
means for them. And at the end of the day, they want to know that they're going to be okay. However,
Right.
I don't feel like it's, our job to define what that means for them. Our job is to
Mhm.
help them understand what the options are and make good choices. But
Mhm.
a lot of times women, especially ones that are in higher net worth situations, they'll say, "Oh, well, you're going to be just fine. There's plenty of assets there." Yeah, okay. And so now we're going to like skirt around full transparency and disclosure because they're going to be fine and they can just accept the settlement deal. I mean, I had a client whose husband owned a business. They came to the table after a year's worth of, officially filing, nothing had happened. He comes to the table with a proposal and says, "Hey, by the way, here's the proposal. We'll, give you $1 million buyout." Now, there might be some people who are like, "I would have taken it." It doesn't matter the dollar amount because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, you can have more dollars, more zeros in your bank account, but if you don't know what it means for you, it
Right.
doesn't really matter. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
So the attorney was like, "Yeah, you could take it." And I pushed back and said, "Okay, I don't we don't have enough information to actually make that decision. Here's a couple things that we still need." And the attorneys that might be listening or they're like, "Oh, well, that never happened." Yeah, it does. They totally will, people will do side deals, right?
Yeah.
But we did had no information, no transparency on his financial picture. And quite frankly, she could have taken it. And I
Mhm.
said, I don't think that's a good idea. So we pushed back. We got more involved. The attorney was kind of cool to see. He actually got kind of reinvigorated. Like, I think
Mhm.
he's been doing this for so long. He was tired and burned out.
Yeah.
And I brought great energy and we were positive and we were, and every email, Jeannie, from that point was like, go team. Like he was so
Oh, I love it.
excited. And
Mhm.
she walked away with $3.9 million.
Woo! I mean, right?
I mean, and I had goosebumps. Like, and even today, I mean, she's like, "Rhonda, whatever," like, you know, because and again, we didn't
Wow.
go in there, wanting to take him out at the knees, but we wanted to ask specific questions and we wanted to work together as a team with the attorney.
Mhm.
And I think the other part that's interesting about the work that I'm doing is a lot of CDFAs are affiliated with a particular investment firm. I'm no longer giving financial advice. I'm not giving investment advice. I'm not selling insurance. All I do all day is develop strategies with and for women that are going through divorce. That's it. So I'm using my CDFA credential, probably what would be considered more of like a coaching, educational, advocacy perspective than
Mhm.
actually kind of looking at it as a way to capture assets on the back end because, that's not how I'm using my credential.
Mhm. So you're putting the puzzle together. That's what you're doing, and you'll
I
know
am.
all the parts of the puzzle,
Yep.
where we are, who is used to getting divorced, right? It's not like someone is constantly, oh, I've done this 20 million times. Okay. And so of course, having an expert, and I love that you're not aligned with anyone to give that advice and that, saying, well, I know this is the policy. You You own it. It's your business. It's all about financial wellness and doing the right thing. Now, regarding the divorce attorneys, when you say you work nationwide, so do you have attorneys nationwide, or like how does that work? What if someone, in New York. So like what if someone calls you from New York? How does that work exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. Yes, we are, like I said, it's always a challenge to find attorneys in new states that we're working in, but there's
Mhm.
some that we certainly have a track record in working in. We've got a short list of attorneys that we recommend. New York, for example, I do have a couple that I have worked with that I will usually recommend to people. So I've got some experience. If we're going into new territory, like I don't think I have any clients in South Dakota, for example.
Okay.
Um, what I will do is I will reach out to my national network. I will do preliminary interviews with the attorneys, me personally, before I pull in the client. Again, when I do that due diligence to make sure that they're a good fit for my clients and our mission and vision and stuff like that. And then usually at that point, I mean, you got to start somewhere, right? So we
Right.
do
Okay.
that and then we just monitor, and then I'm always asking the clients for feedback. And so once we start having some good, experiences, then it's like, okay, great, we've got our people. So
Right.
there's a little bit of, yeah, vetting and asking
Right.
my colleagues like, hey, who do we
Yeah.
know that's,
Of course.
legit?
That's nice. That's a nice, yeah, but that's great. But also, you did say someone can come to you if she is in the middle of the process, already has an attorney, and
Yes.
she's in Florida,
Yeah.
and it doesn't
Yep.
matter. You're not saying you have to work with our Rolodex of attorneys. So I'm just, so
Yeah.
that's awesome too.
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
get them wherever that is. Now, let me ask you this because I ask everyone who comes on, how did you ever learn about credit? Got to bring it to credit for a second.
Yes, absolutely. How did I learn about credit? Um, that's a great question. So I would say I was the person who, for the most part, even like through college, never had a credit card, did not like debt, did not like, didn't want to have a credit card because I wasn't sure about them. And then over the years, I would say probably like in my early 20s, late mid 20s, I started to kind of reevaluate that. Ended up getting a credit card, ended up taking out, a loan to purchase an office. So again, I always think of things as like it's knowledge of the credit, which again, let's face it, anybody who's like comes here from other places and they're like, this, what exactly? How does this work? And I have to carry debt to do what? I mean, I have to like have, right, which is where you come in because it is
Yeah.
kind of confusing.
Right.
But I would say that was, that was kind of the first thing. You have an initial credit card, and then thankfully now over probably the last, I would say 7 years, I have downloaded some apps that help me just kind of monitor that stuff and have learned a
Yep.
little bit more about it. But I would say it's not been like the fire hose. It's been, you know, taking things that I'm seeing, right,
Right.
applying it, and then kind
Yep.
of continuing to go down that path.
Yeah. Step by step. So,
Yeah.
and that's, yeah. And again, I love, as you know, healthy credit. It's so important. I just got asked this before the podcast. Why should people have any credit cards? Well, hello. Right now, we can get money back with prices going up. Use your rewards, get the cash back. If you're going to purchase something, why not use credit in a healthy way? So I love that story of how you learned in the building blocks. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's building blocks. And you know what? I think the other thing that we have to, certainly we don't have enough time to address it now, but it is something that I think is important is identifying, right, our attitudes and beliefs around our money. And there is a lot of trauma. I mean, a lot of the people that I work with, and I'm sure some of the ones that you work with have trauma around debt. So one of the
Yeah.
things I see particularly for women that are going through divorce is, Rhonda, I've never had to take out a loan. I've never taken out a credit card. And at the end of the day, it's tricky because until they can make that initial leap into investing in the people that they need to help them move them forward, they're going to stay stuck.
Right.
So, as you know, the late 70s is when women could finally have and take out a loan without having to have a male cosigner.
Mm.
And yet I see there's so many women that still are really adverse to having any kind of credit open or taking out a loan or doing stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, but that isn't bad. We just have to know
Right.
how to use it
Right.
to leverage it, for certain aspects of our life. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of work to be done around our mindset around money, around credit, because again, I think there's a lot of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% there's fear. And that's why you have your podcast and I have mine to talk about money. It's a
Yeah.
good, money is it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And
Yeah.
it can help you sleep at night. It's not the most powerful thing, but it feels good when you have it.
Yeah.
And it helps me sleep at night. So thank you so much, Rhonda. Now I'll have all your links, but where can people, what's the best place where everyone can find you?
Yeah, sure. They can check out my website. It's wfwcdivorce.com. They can check out the podcast, blog articles, grab some freebies, schedule a time to chat, all the things in one place. So, yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Bye.